Win big in 2024 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the live draft assistant, free agent finder, and lineup optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got paid contests coming to a state near you. They're boosting and slashing stuff all day long. Check it out. Real fun platform over there. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grover bringing you another interlude episode of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap That. With me this evening, you've seen him on Tap That before. He is a wonderkind of the indoor and spring football world. Everybody knows this guy. And he is currently the assistant director of player personnel for the Vegas Nighthawks of the Indoor Football League. Give it up again for Evan Willsmore. Evan, thank you so much for being here, man. How's it going?
Good, Brady. I appreciate you having me on again. Obviously a lot to talk about as usual, but excited to get into it.
And so, first of all, man, like, how's your time at LSU going? Very easy, I'm sure, like, for anybody who follows you on social media, probably easy for yourself to forget sometimes that you were also like a college student.
It's going well, man. This year's been rolling. We're like 2 months in or whatever. Last year went well, it was pretty easy overall. Now I'm getting into, some of the more nitty-gritty in terms of my actual major, which is sport management, or they call it sport administration here, but same thing. So it's all going well, man, just getting through school, getting through football, getting through life. It never stops, but I'm blessed to be in the position I'm in, so.
It's crazy, man, because when I was in school not even that long ago, like undergrad 2015 and 2019, very few people or like schools really had like sports management and sports administration programs that they took seriously. It was like you had to be in some very specific pockets of the country. And then the NIL happens, and then suddenly it seems like this is something that a lot more people want to get into.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll tell you, sport management, I think, has always been kind of the, foundation for people who want to, get into sports and study it at the college level. But, man, it's branching out even more. Like I hear some places, have sport analytics, and obviously, esports are becoming more popular. So they're incorporating that into certain college environments. So it's nice to see it growing, and it's nice to see that more people, have more opportunities to learn about, the sports field and the professions you can get into in the sports world, regardless of what sport you're, looking at. Like I'm doing football, obviously, but plenty of other options out there, for people. And it's definitely, I can tell you just from the things that I see here, it's definitely popular. I think a lot of people want to work in sports and go into it. A lot of people already have it as a passion and want to build on it. So again, good to see.
Yeah, and now it's not just for people that are interested in, football, basketball, baseball. Every sport under the sun, especially, I mean, talking about LSU, talking about the heart of the SEC, there's really no limit. We thought we knew what the limits of NIL was going to be, and day one of that years ago blew it out of the water, and we never knew to expect something like that.
Yeah, man. I mean, like NIL, when it comes to college football, that's definitely, I mean, got to be one of the most talked about things in my circle. And, obviously, working in Vegas, I got to hear a lot about the situation with Matt Sluka, who was the quarterback over there at UNLV, who isn't there anymore, due to a NIL dispute. And it's a shame because I remember watching Matt at Holy Cross, and I've had some interactions with him here and there. Really great guy. Was excited for him to transfer up to the FCS, from the FCS level to the FBS level into the Mountain West. And he was playing, pretty well. Besides some accuracy stuff, I thought he was doing really well at UNLV. So I'm not going to comment too much on the situation just because it's complex and I honestly don't know a ton about it. It seems to be there's a lot of finger pointing and the whole he said she said bit, but wishing the best, for him and the rest of his career, and really just kind of highlights where we're at in general. I mean, you had mentioned some stuff, and fortunately for UNLV, they had another quarterback, Haj Malik Williams, another FCS transfer who came from Campbell, who's also been playing really well. So they were able to slot him in there and didn't really lose a step. But again, moving forward, it'll be interesting just to see, how things continue to change and what'll happen to the NCAA. But I know you only wanted to talk for 30 minutes. Probably hard to cover all that in that time frame.
I mean, we'll talk about everything that we want to talk about, whatever works for you, man. And I agree. Like when that whole thing broke, I didn't even want to form an opinion on it because it seems like there's a lot of information that I just don't have about it. But as to Sluka, man, like I loved watching him at Holy Cross. He was like the Tim Tebow of the FCS when he was there, and I think if nothing else, I think that whole situation just highlights, one of the bumps in the road and navigating the learning curve of the NIL in 2024.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, going back to the whole LSU, sport management bit, I just got an email because we did course scheduling yesterday for the next semester in the spring, and I got an email about this new class they're doing here, which is the history of intercollegiate athletics with a focus on the FBS level. It's a 4,000 level class, which here is considered, pretty high up, kind of something you'd be taking senior year as an elective. I mean, that's maybe getting a bit specific, but the fact that they've introduced that class shows that, there is a burning passion, not only for sports, but specifically football, right? And we're getting these football specific classes that just weren't, at least to my knowledge, weren't around that long ago. And I don't think we're the only school that's implementing that.
No, and like I've told you before, like I'm a University of Kentucky guy, and it's the NIL has been a weird period for us, like naturally it's there for basketball, and all the business aspects of it have allowed Kentucky to keep up with the Joneses when it comes to football. All we had to do was go 6-6 and 7-5 for the right stretch of time, and we're suddenly at the table where we're making a lot of money. And now baseball is a profitable sport for a lot more schools, and that's thanks to a lot more games being actually broadcast on TV. And really, you got to think that part of it is helped by the fact that I think MLB franchises are more focusing on college talent than ever before.
Yeah, man. I mean, NIL, it's stretching everywhere now. You're seeing it, well outside of football. I mean, I know I haven't watched it yet, but there was that Amazon documentary that came out about LSU, here and all the people, that have been involved with, well, sports, and then obviously NIL is a part of that. I think the name of the documentary is Moneyball. My mom called me the other day and told me she watched it and said it was really interesting. So I got to get on that. But yeah, I mean, the fact that we've got, full-fledged documentaries on major platforms regarding, student athletes making money, that wasn't even possible 5 years ago. The fact that I've been able to, as someone who's young and kind of up and coming in this industry, be able to witness everything that's happened with, NIL and college athletes getting paid, which even before that was introduced was one of the hottest topics really in all sports here in America, at least with the way we have it set up for a long time. So it's interesting to see again how everything will unfold. And again, I'm still on the fence. I was always kind of an advocate for guys, being able to make some money, but I think a lot of people are in agreement that there should be some limitations in place, and the NCAA maybe hasn't done the best job of that. But we'll see how it is moving forward. It's clearly something we got to navigate and figure out. I mean, there's certain. The last thing I'll say about this really is I know there's certain, college athletic programs, especially in football too, that have like, staff members that are hired on now just to kind of handle NIL and help be there and navigate the financial side, for these athletes, or at least assist them, in that process. So again, that's all new, and I think there's a lot of people, whether they're young and have only been doing this for a short amount of time, or they're old seasoned veterans who feel like they know the game really well, who are struggling with it a bit.
And so with that, that's a good transition to where we can let's talk about the indoor football league. Let's talk about the entire world of indoor and arena football. This year, this past IFL season was an absolute blast to watch. I really enjoyed the product every single week. I think that like the competition level this year was absolutely phenomenal. The individual player performances were fantastic. Um, the Vegas Nighthawks ended up 11-6 in the Western Conference overall by the end of the year. An incredibly competitive conference. The Gunslingers, third from last, and they ended up a 500 team. Northern Arizona, San Diego, Vegas, Bay Area, Arizona, and the Eastern Conference, while there was less parity, Green Bay and Frisco and Massachusetts, I think at the very least everybody knew that they were going to be players come the end of the year. And the media coverage, there's more people talking about the IFL week by week on the internet now than I've ever seen. The IFL was putting out great weekly recap articles that made it easy to follow and keep up with stuff. Obviously, for Vegas, this season didn't end up exactly the way that you all hoped for, despite a fantastic season overall. What were some of your takeaways just from this past season of the IFL, and how you were kind of operating and thriving in the position that you have?
Yeah, man. Well, first off, I mean, just got to say, really proud of our team this year and the effort that we put forward. Like you said, the goal is to win a championship, and we didn't get there this year, but we pretty much flipped the record. We went 11-5 in the regular season this year, and then I think the year before in 23 we were 6-10. So we pretty much flipped the record, if not made it better. And then unfortunately lost in the first round of the playoffs to a great experienced Arizona team. Um, so again, we didn't get there to the championship, which was unfortunate, but there's so much to be proud of, man, and we made so much progress this year. And I remember going into the whole thing, and this time a year ago, really, our head coach and general manager Mike Davis, one of the things he always preached was, you know, it takes 3 years to really build a good, organized, functional football team. If you set it up the right way, year 3 is when you're gonna start turning that corner, and you'll see, positive changes, right? Maybe compared to, how things had been in years past. Because of course, Vegas, we were an expansion franchise coming in to the IFL. First season was in 2022, so last season was our third year ever playing, right, ever existing. And, we were able to make the playoffs for the first time and put on a good product. And most importantly, from the player side of it, had a lot of guys that were able to advance and level up and further their careers. I was just up in BC this past weekend at the BC Lions game there in the CFL. Got to hang out, got to talk to Corey Woodruff, one of our former offensive lineman, who was able to sign up there and work his way, onto the active roster. Now he's playing in some games. We had CJ Wyndham, who signed in the UFL with the Houston Roughnecks. And then Bryce Hampton just recently signed with the Toronto Argonauts in the CFL, and he was the IFL Defensive Rookie of the Year this year. So really happy for all those guys. And I mean, we had even more. I'm not going to name everybody, obviously, for time's sake, but Jerome Johnson, won the MVP. That was a big deal. Our quarterback, and he's going to come back for us next year and hopefully, put together another good season and get us to where we want to be in terms of that championship. Quentin Randolph, I think, is a great leader. We're getting him back too. Very vocal in the locker room, always lifts our guys up, really knows what he's doing. He's a guy who I think, might have a good shot at, maybe getting up there to another league at some point. So all around, man, we had a great product this year, great culture, great fans, and I'm very happy to still be a part of it.
And yeah, Jerome Johnson, 2,029 yards passing, 800 yards rushing, absolutely phenomenal. And you just look at like the top 7 or 8 of guys in each statistical category in the IFL. Jimmy Robinson had an amazing season for Massachusetts. TJ Edwards, when he was able to play, was great as always. Castronova, Nate Davis, Joshua Jones, Max Mailer, Dalton Sneed. Like every team had playmakers this year. Not only that, one, I did have I think I went 0 for 3 on my IFL bets this year. It was on each spread. It was like you just never know. It speaks to the competition level. But have you noticed, like, over this past year, do you are you starting to find that maybe a presence in the backfield, like consistent rushing attack, is a little bit more of a point of emphasis for indoor football league teams?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think you got to be able to run the football in this league. Having a dual threat quarterback is something that we always emphasized, and we certainly hit on that this year with the development of Jerome Johnson. The way he was able to play with his passing and rushing ability. Yeah, man. I mean, I think it's important to have guys operating in all phases of the game. I felt like one of the reasons we were really successful on offense this year was because we had a good running attack since we had our quarterback and Antonio Wimbush was in there too, who we brought over from Iowa. Another great guy. He was hindered a bit by some injuries, but when he was in there, he was pretty impactful. But I think we just did a good job at mixing things up. Having a good balance of the run game and the pass game. And I credit our offensive coordinator, Curtis Chin. He's a big part of why we won this year. And our team wouldn't be the same without him. I think he was probably one of the more underrated additions to our team in the offseason. He's a part of the staff, right? He's not a player, but the way he was able to, work with Jerome and turn him into a guy who was in Green Bay last year and had some potential, started some games, had the flashes, and turned him into an MVP quarterback. It speaks a lot to, his ability and his experience, doing this in the indoor football league. So hats off to him. And like you said, or, to answer your question, yeah, man. I mean, just again, having the ability to run and pass the football freely is going to win you a lot of football games. And we did that this year.
And I think especially when you're trying to be a league that is not only putting on a good product, but is also passing players along to, the next step and advancing their careers. It's always good when you are not where you don't just have to tout the quarterbacks, the kickers, and the wide receivers. When there's a place for running backs and for everybody on the defensive side to showcase their skills in a meaningful way, it's got to make the product all the better.
Yeah, man. I mean, the player development aspect is a huge part of our operation. Like I said, we had multiple guys, advance up to the CFL and UFL levels. There was a guy that I didn't even mention, Tucker Horn, who we had signed for this season in 2025, out of Trinity, which is a D3 school at Texas. He was one of the top passers at that level. We signed him, and then now he's off to Toronto to join Bryce Hampton and Cam Dukes, who was another former quarterback with us, who's played in some games this year with the Argos in the wake of Chad Kelly's suspension. So again, man, we're big on the player development. It's a big selling point for us, and most importantly, it's worked, right? I mean, we've had guys not only it's one thing to advance to another league and sign a contract and have the opportunity to learn and train camp, but it's another thing to have those guys latch on and compete in those other leagues, right, and see playing time. I mentioned Corey Woodruff earlier, O lineman out of Pitt State. Who's now in BC, the BC Lions of the CFL. Like he's the definition, in my opinion, of a guy who was patient because he was there before I was. He was playing there in 23. Remember seeing him at the IFL XFL combine, which is kind of, where I got my first taste of all the IFL stuff. And I remember looking at him thinking, he's a big dude. He's like 340. He's a big guy. He can kind of, sit there and anchor the line. And he worked his way up, earned a contract in BC, earned a spot in camp, beat out another former UFL player for that spot. Um, and now he has the opportunity to play in games, right? He's not just sitting there. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with just sitting on the practice roster and developing. I mean, you're still there, getting quality coaching and, whatever. But, he's playing in games. Like he's a part of that unit. He's contributing. And again, I was up there this weekend, watching the team and had a chat with him after, and he's really happy, and he credits what we were able to do for him in Vegas is the reason why, he's there and he's able to do that and why he feels prepared, So always good to see guys move up and we've got many more to come. So
And I think the flip side what of what we were just talking about is that more and more people now, I think because the IFL for a long time in indoor and arena, there was a lot of different leagues, not necessarily one that stood out as a gold standard. And now the IFL has kind of taken that spot and firmly established it. And that's why, you're seeing guys go from Canada and the UFL back to the IFL and for whatever reason, for a bunch of different reasons. And I think up till not that long ago, people still didn't really appreciate the value of playing when you get the opportunity. Because naturally, when a lot of guys get the opportunity to go and be a practice squad guy or a third string guy, it ends up being a no-brainer just because it puts them in a great financial position to be in those spots. But say you're a dude like, like Lindsey Scott, or like a bunch of different guys in the UFL, or a bunch of different guys in the IFL, who it's like you have a very precious window of time after college to show people exactly what your peak capabilities are. Because every draft, even though there's differences between everybody, and it doesn't mean that a guy that came out 2 years ago isn't special and couldn't end up being a starter and in a better position. The fact is, there's 5, 7 more guys getting drafted, and 15 more undrafted free agents that are getting workouts at different places. So you have a precious window of time to really show people what you can do.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, the IFL does a good job at focusing on, the younger talent that's more fresh out of college, guys that are, under the age of 28. Excuse me, that's really our target market. Um and yeah, man, I mean, again, one of the things I always preach too, just from the player development side, is getting game film. Like you had mentioned, a lot of guys, I think, up until recently, until these leagues have really established themselves, or in particular, the IFL. Some of these leagues, or some of these players, didn't always understand the value of having game film in order to get another opportunity. A lot of guys just worry about finances, and I understand, it's not going to be for everybody. The IFL can only offer you so much financially, but I always tell guys, I say, look, if you love this game, if you want to get better, this is the place you want to be, because you're going to get reps here. You're going to get game film. We're in touch with a lot of people from the CFL or UFL who are going to at least know who you are, right? We can't guarantee you a contract. That's something you got to work for, at that upper level. But, we can help get you on your way. So if you commit the time, right, and you can make some sacrifices, um, it'll work out for some guys. And again, every year there's a couple who really work hard at it, and they get better, and it proves a lot. It proves who those guys are, it proves what we want to do. And again, we've got many more to come, like I said earlier. So
And people knowing who you are is like everything when you're someone in that position. And not only that, people, I mean, I'm sure you figured this out in the past year. People trust you, like you specifically. People trust Omar, from Quad City. I always want to call it Queen City. But people trust those people that they have those connections with, and it's a big deal to have someone that can say, "Look, man, if you guys are looking for this kind of guy, but there's someone here who I'd be, happy to put you in touch with." That's all you can do, but that goes a long way.
yeah, man. I mean, 100%. And like, we've had a lot of our guys, um, that played with us last season. The UFL's been doing a lot of these showcases in the fall. We've had a good number of guys, go out to those. And part of that is because I encourage them to. I say, look, you're going to go to that showcase. There's going to be a lot of people there, you know, but don't be afraid to go talk to somebody, right? Like, you turn up at that showcase, you still have to put the work in. There's still no guarantees, but you're going to be in front of a lot of coaches and GMs at that, level that you want to get to, right? So being able to turn up and say, hey, my name is so and so. I played for the Vegas Nighthawks. Um, I have game film available. Those guys will remember that. Again, it's not, you have to put in the work to get yourself recognized, but there's more and more opportunities nowadays, for whether it's pro free agents or indoor guys who are trying to get out of that level. There's so many opportunities now, where they can get in front of, quality, again, general managers, coaches from the UFL, like I said, with their showcases, or the CFL. I mean, they're in season right now, or it's about to finish, but eventually, they'll start their kind of American tryout process again. So I always encourage guys to go to those things, because, even if it's going to be an uphill battle and you're working against a lot of other guys who are there, just a handshake and a name to a face type of thing, it can go a long way.
Yeah, it's always good for people to see too that you're just the kind of personality that people like having around and is easy to work with. That goes a long way on any, team setting as well. And speaking of all these showcases, Evan, Folks, if you happen to be in Nevada this upcoming weekend, 300 South Racetrack Road in Henderson, Nevada, the Las Vegas Nighthawks are having open tryouts. Registration fee is $60. Cash only. Questions, contact Mike Davis. The email is on the flyer on Evan Willsmore's Twitter profile. Evan, what are the kind of things that you guys are really looking for in people here? Because obviously, it's so hard from one of these things to look at somebody and know that they're fast enough, they have the intangibles, but it also seems like it takes some very specific skill sets. One want to be a part of an indoor football league team for a whole season, and also it's different parameters to the game, and people got to people at least have to adjust to the fact that there's different rules and it's a different style of the game that's played.
Yeah, man. I mean, when it comes to the player selection process, I mean, at least for this season, I've been working on that since we were already in season, like end of May, putting together a database of guys, and reaching out to players and agents and whoever. As far as the tryout goes, our goal is to always sign a few guys from that, and we have every year. We actually lowered the price this year from $80 to 60. So, for the crowd out there who thinks that it might just be a money grab, and that we're not really going to be giving anybody opportunities, that would be my argument to that is, we want to make this more accessible and have, maybe a bigger turnout so we have more guys to pick from. I know that there will be a few guys there flying in from, different places outside of Vegas, who I've already been in contact with, just to get a better look at them. Again, and like that's, guys who do that, they're showing me that they're committed, right? Like if they're going to come, fly out on their own time and money and pay a bit of extra money to attend our tryout, that shows commitment, right? It shows that you want to be there, you want to be with us, you understand the culture, you're buying in, the values of the league, a whole, list of different things. So really, I mean, that tryout is tailored mostly to guys who are in the Vegas area or within a certain radius. I mean, you look at, maybe other parts of Nevada, California is a big one we pull from, Arizona, Southern Utah, all that kind of, I don't, yeah, you wouldn't really call it the Midwest, but, kind of that maybe Mountain West area, and we'll see how it goes. Again, I expect to get a couple guys out of that. And, once we evaluate, the best players from the tryout and get them under contract, that'll kind of, I don't want to say set the standard, but it'll put us at a good spot as to what we need to do for the rest of the offseason because, we're still pretty early in the process. I mean, we've got a couple new guys under contract for this year, but, we really only started heating things up with the signings, beginning of October, which is the same timeline that it was last year. And then our season actually won't begin until March. Schedule comes out, I think next week. So that'll be exciting. But yeah, man, I mean, in terms of other player evaluation things, I mean, probably worth saying that like my DMs are always open. I'm happy to, look at film and go over stuff. And, I've got a pretty big task when it comes to, scouting just because I'm in charge of, you're pretty much looking at the whole country and all levels. It's, college, guys who have already been pro. So there's a wide range of things I have to sort through. So sometimes, with the DMs, like it takes me a while to get through them all. So I appreciate, patience from the players and maybe their agents if they've got one, during that process. But so far, so good. I mean, like I said, we've already got a couple guys who I feel good about, under contract and then re-signed a lot of the key guys from last year who weren't able to advance into another league yet. Yeah, man. So I guess we've made some good progress is what I'll say.
And the UFL signings are heating up too. I mean, just today, Abram Smith re-signs with the DC Defenders, which is great to see after he was out the entire year. Kellen Mond is going to be with the San Antonio Brahmas, which kind of came out of left field, but still was big news. Now, another league that I followed very closely this past year was the European League of Football, which I think that they had a great product this year. That now if you had to criticize, you'd say there were a lot of blowouts, and that's because there's a lot of countries that they have to pull from their homegrown talent, and they're not all the way there yet. That's still a work in progress. And so obviously, I wouldn't figure that too many guys from the international scene are making their way over to the IFL and other American indoor and arena leagues. But have you noticed any trends in just American pro football or in the Canadian scene when it comes to international talent starting to work its way over? Because there's a handful of guys from the European League of Football that I would very confidently say can play at a level in within the United States or in Canada.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think the CFL has a pretty decent setup. They've got the global designation for players, which is guys that aren't, Canadians or Americans. So going further out, and I think there's a couple dudes that have been over in Europe that are making their way on the CFL practice rosters and might be in CFL camps next year. Man, I mean, the ELF, it's in an interesting spot. I mean, I think we talked about this last time I was on the show, or just European football in general and the development of that. I think a lot of their success is still, is still put on the they call them A imports, I think, or guys that are coming in from the US, and like that's fine. But they don't have many American import spots. And I think like the European talent, it's definitely growing, right? And I think, there are now starting to be a couple guys in that league who are Europeans who are really they can compete up to that, American standard, right? And they can go up against these A imports that they're playing within that league and hold up decently. But I think it also comes down to the college football system, here in the United States and even up in Canada with youth sports, and that's stuff we talked about at the beginning of the show, with NIL and all that. But generally speaking, like the NCAA system, if we really want to focus on that, I think is still best set up for player success when it comes to advancement into the pros. Obviously, Europe doesn't have that. They've got more junior teams and whatever. And I think that is maybe a reason why some of those guys are maybe slower developing, but the game is still growing over there. And that's the good thing, is that, a lot of people care about it. And I think that's only going to, continue as the years go along. And, yeah, shout out to the ELF in general. I mean, they've put together a great product. And, as far as the A imports go, they seem to get some pretty decent names over there. And, not all of them work out sometimes, but, overall, they've got a good product. And I think, they're going to continue to grow and prosper in the coming years.
Yeah, N'Kosi Perry, I think, was the notable one from this past year from Miami, who had a pretty good season for the Raiders tier role. And like,
Mhm.
yeah, Levi Lewis unfortunately went into a pretty bad situation over there for the Barcelona Dragons, but still like a big name, like in a recent name from the college football ranks that people, remember watching. And I think like the more that those guys are looking for opportunities, the more that the coaches will, the better that the coaches are over there, the quicker and the better that the game is going to develop to over there. It's got to be a work in progress, when you've got a pro football team based out of Hungary and most of your players have to be Hungarian. I would expect it to take, a handful of years to that to get up to a point, but like, it'll come along because it seems like those fans really enjoy it.
Yeah, man, and I mean, speaking about, I know you mentioned N'Kosi Perry before he signed with the Raiders over there in Europe. He was playing in the IFL with Jacksonville for a couple games at least. So, again, another guy that's been able to bounce around, and his name always stood out to me in particular. I was interested to see if he would ever come into the IFL, which he did this year, and he didn't play great. Maybe that was the setup or, whatever. Maybe just adjusting to a different game. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for him. But like you said, he went over there to Europe and seemed to have a decent time. I didn't track too much of him. But I know that I think that team had another guy, Juan Carlos Santana, who I really liked out of Tulsa. And he had been in a CFL camp, and they had him over there too. I think he was on that team at least. Don't quote me on that. But again, talking about those A import guys, like they're getting some decent names. Like I think it's safe to say that, I am now competing with the ELF when it comes to acquiring talent, right? And they, seem to have a decent pull over there. And part of that's probably financials, but logistically, that's hard for some guys, right? Moving to Europe for a couple months and adjusting to a new culture, a new country. I've heard from guys directly that it's challenging. So
Yeah, I would imagine, especially like it's not Tyler Kolka, who I've had on this show before. He, was over in the X League in Japan, which is a whole other like that's like to the 10th degree. That's challenging to make that transition. Um, and so one of our like closing topics here can kind of it's been a crazy last 365 days for the world of indoor and arena football. Like the National Arena League had some movement because some teams shifted around to the Indoor Football League. The big one, obviously, over the past year was the AFL, which I think ended the season on a decent note with having that game in the Giant Mall in New Jersey. It was actually pretty cool, viewing experience. They've got a contract with CBS Sports Network that they have longevity. They have a recognizable brand that goes back, decades. But even just now, the Frisco Fighters are not going to be a part of the Indoor Football League for this upcoming season. There's new teams that are going to be a part of this Indoor Football League season. What is your current sense just overall of the business and the fanfare of indoor football and arena football around the country? And what's it like operating in this space when really like and even for an organization as like rock solid as the IFL, there's so much uncertainty that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's just the nature of the indoor and arena game. I mean, a lot of people, saw that with the way the rebooted AFL worked out last year, where they went into it with I think the same number of teams we had, which was 16, and then by mid-season half of them were gone. And now they've rebranded the whole thing as AF1. Although I do like some of the guys working over there. I know. Last year there were some issues with upper management, but seems like they're in good hands with Jeff Fisher and Gary Compton is another guy that I follow and see his stuff, and I know he did a lot with the AFL before. So like they seem to be making some progress. I still think they've got a ways to go, but in terms of the overall scene in general, I mean, even like you said, for as good of a league that we have and as solid as the operation has been, you're still reminded every now and then that things aren't going to last forever, right? It's not always guaranteed, depending on your situation. Now, in Vegas, we're in a really good spot. And that's another thing that I like to tell players, if they have questions about, again, the stability of the operation. We are very fortunate to be backed by Bill Foley and his group, who own the Vegas Golden Knights. We're part of that tier. We share our arena with the Henderson Silver Knights, which are the AHL hockey affiliate of the Golden Knights. So again, we've got a really good group of people taking care of us. But some other organizations don't have that same backing, right? There's a lot of variation at this level of the game, and you saw that this week. Frisco, who was one of the better teams in our league last year, announced that they wouldn't be coming back. Duke City is another one, who said that they won't be coming back next year either. So we lost two teams, which is unfortunate always. But we're also adding another team, the Fisher's Freight over in Indiana. And from what I've seen so far, it looks like they have a good operation too, and the right backing, and got a great coach in Dixie Wooten, who was fantastic offensive coordinator in Bay Area, working with Rob Keefe this past season, and we had some great games against them. So excited to see what they do. So again, teams, people come and go. That's just I think it's always going to be this way at this level of the game, unfortunately. But you kind of roll with it, and I still feel really good about the overall product, and you know again, it's always unfortunate when a team has to close its doors, and that means opportunities lost. And, again, unfortunately, we've also been over that a lot in the just general, I guess you would say, alternative football space. But I still have a lot of hope, for the game of indoor football. And like you said, definitely seems to be gaining some traction again. I think, now that there's the IFL and whatever's going to become of this AF1, and the NAL has some decent teams too. There's a lot of teams at this level now for people to follow. And I understand that, maybe some of them, maybe some of them won't be around forever, and some situations are more stable than others. But the idea is that, people have a lot to work with in this space right now. And I think that's really good for, people who want to know more about our game and in our league and what we have going on.
And you hate to see opportunities lost, right? And obviously, a lot of people in these spaces. You are ever the gentleman for the way that you were able to navigate the conversation that we're having right now. Really, like what it comes down to, like you mentioned, you guys are real fortunate to have a fantastic ownership group. Which has got to be the number one issue in the majority of the cases where these things go bad. The same is really in like the MMA regional scene, where I think there's a lot of people that think that this sounds like a cool thing to do, and they like to put on the costume and play the part for it a little bit, but they don't have the passion, the know all, or both to really be able to pull it off for the long term, which is what people need them for.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think, you have to have a pretty high level of commitment at this level of the game. And again, that's something that gets overlooked. Guys think, and I'll talk about players here specifically, but there's a lot of players, for example, that maybe walk in at this level and, regardless of whether they've been, at the highest ranks of the college game and the pros, or they're coming from a D2 school and still have a lot to prove, excuse me. Some of those guys come in and they just don't have the right mentality. They think that, this is some cheap semi-pro league where, guys really aren't competing and it's going to be a cakewalk. But I tell guys, I say, if you go into it with that attitude, um, you know, you're gonna get your ass kicked. Really, there's no other way to put it. Pretty quickly, and you might find yourself out of the league pretty quickly too if you can't get things in order. So, look, it's a fun league. We have a good time. Um, but quality of play is something that I've always emphasized. I still think we have a really high quality of play in our league, even if we don't always have, the biggest, what would you call it? Maybe brand recognition, name recognition, whatever it is. But quality of play, I still think, again, from having now worked in the league for a full season and been to many games, I can tell you that, even some of the teams who, weren't successful in our league this past season or didn't make playoffs, those teams still have a ton of playmakers.
Absolutely. I'm sad to see Duke City go. I enjoyed watching Hassan Rogers this season. They obviously it was a really tough year to have a winning record in this league. There's a lot of good teams, but I really like over this past year. I don't know if I can say enough good things about the indoor football league, because if you only have two things, quality of play on the field and a tremendous fan experience, then then the other pieces can kind of fall into place. And we've talked about it before. I love the way that the indoor football league has attempted to set itself apart. You can go and watch every game from the entire season on YouTube, and if you want, you could catch up on the season in a couple of weeks and be in love with it by the end of it. The colors of the field, the rules of the game, I think that they're doing everything that they can, and I think that they have the future in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a great team, at the actual league, who does a great job marketing. One of the things you had mentioned earlier, having the weekly recaps, right, of what, what happened in our league, on a weekly basis. I think stuff like that is really good for people who, again, they want to get into it, but maybe they don't know where to start or what to look at or how it all works. Like, having the league put out something every week that says, hey, here's who won, here's who lost, here were some of the, best performers. I think that stuff's great. It helps the growth of the game, and that's what we really need. Again, people who take it seriously and want to commit the time to it, because we have a really good product. And indoor football, again, it's still not the most popular thing. It might never be, but there's this great group of people who they find it, they get into it, and then they really enjoy it. Like, the one thing I'll tell you, man, is, even if we only have an arena that can fit 5,000 or 6,000 people, we have a lot of loyal fans, right? The people who turn up to those games, they really get into it, right? They love the action. It's great for them whether we win or lose. Obviously, we'd always like to win, but again, another emphasis we had going into the season was, win the home games, right? Like, the goal is to always, go undefeated at home, right? And we came close to doing that this year. I think we dropped one or two at home. I should know that, but again, don't quote me on it. but we came close, right? And again, even in the games that we lost, we were still competitive, still gave a great opportunity for fans to look at what we have going on. Again, whether they have been super passionate about this for a long time or they don't really know the ins and outs of it, but they think that it's cool and they see something that they like. Again, there's so many facets that go into that, whether it's, players, coaches, support staff, man. But again, we have a really good game and I take pride in that.
And you mentioned it to like about those weekly recaps. It's something that I hate from any organization who doesn't have those things where you don't have a blog, there's no podcast or radio show or YouTube channel. It's lazy. People, there's people that are willing to do this stuff for free to break, into whatever they're trying to do, and to not give people information about your product is insane. So it's great to see that the Indoor Football League and each of the individual teams recognizes like how to properly engage with their fan base and how to get new fans and show players that people do care about the Indoor Football League and people do love to watch it. Evan, I've kept you for longer than we planned to, but I think we both could have guessed that was probably going to happen beforehand. I think it'll probably happen next time too. But folks, this has been Evan Willsmore, Assistant Director of Player Personnel for the Las Vegas Nighthawks, making his second appearance on Tap That. Evan, thank you so much for being here. It was a great conversation again. And anything else that you want to say or anybody you want to shout out, the floor is yours.
um, Not really, man. Just again, thanks for having me on. Always a good time and looking forward to the next one.
Folks, this has been another interlude episode of Tap That. If you're in Nevada this upcoming weekend, go try out for the Vegas Nighthawks. It's going to be a great opportunity. You couldn't ask for too many more better evaluators of talent to be watching you than this guy here, Evan Willsmore. Folks, thanks for listening. Have yourselves a great week. Can't wait for all the post NFL professional football to be starting in a handful of months here. Have yourselves a great week and peace.